never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, back in the preseason for another team preview. This week, it is the Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs. Quite a SuperCoach relevant team. And for this one, we have David Van der Giesen, better known as DVG on social media, and also former overall NBL SuperCoach champion from, 2 years ago now, Dave?
I think so, yeah. 2 years ago was the inaugural year of it, so, yeah.
Mate, time flies, and you're also an avid Bulldogs fan and also avid NRL SuperCoacher as well, so you got to add that to your list. You've got the NBL down, need another sport now.
Yeah, look, you know me better than a lot of the community, Barnesy. It's SuperCoach is my big pastime in my life because I'm a dad to 5 kids, so I don't really have anything else. And I'm actually, outside of obviously the NBL success, actually having quite the purple patch in the EPL SuperCoach. Currently coming 46th overall out of 46,000 or something there. And NBA, would you believe, I'm coming 49th overall out of 35,000. So it's... Look, I'm trying my best to, climb those rankings and stay there. So I've been trying to do that while doing my NRL research. It's always a bit of a juggle, but I do love it.
No, that's awesome, mate. And look, DVG, you're doing well in those ones. I don't do EPL, but I have to say I was chasing you in NBL glory. I was 9th overall going into last round.
Yeah.
But none of it's going to matter because they're not going to crown me even if I come first because
that's right.
did the bloody beat the coach. So
that's right.
I was all pumped for this year to win it all, and now I'm in the running, and it's not going to make any difference. I've been smashing the NBA like you.
Yeah.
I'm about 500-ish at the moment. But I've had a pretty decent week. So every week I'm clawing about 100 to 150 spots for about 6 weeks in a row. So I'm coming. Coming. But NFL, I tried my hand at put my hand up for that too, and that did not go well.
Yeah,
well,
I had a bad year as well.
I don't know NFL too well. I finished, I think 1,500, so I wasn't too unhappy with that. Did you do NFL too?
I did. It was really annoying because at one point of the year, it was in round 4 or 5. I actually got as high up as like 36th overall, and then I just had the worst 3 weeks in a row where things went, and in 3 weeks I dropped about 800 or 900 rankings, and then I lost all my trades. So I think I finished like 2,300 or something, which again, when you think of how many people do it, that's still great. It was just frustrating how I started so well, and it just came to pieces. I had three bad weeks in a row with captain, and it really sort of damaged the rankings. But that's SuperCoach. That's why we keep turning up and doing stuff like this with the community. It's something we all love doing.
Very hard to juggle, especially when all the competitions run into each other. So I'm definitely going to find NBA hard once the NRL gets underway, because that's going to cross over as well.
Yeah.
Look, let's have a chat about your Bulldogs. So, I mean, we're going to go through, as everybody that's been paying attention to the team previews will know, but those that haven't, the gains and losses, quickly the roster, have a bit of a discussion about the draw and how we think they'll go. And then we're going to go through the individual players of interest and see whether we could find any gems in there or who you should start with for round 1. But I guess when we're having a look at the player movements, first of all, there's not a lot of change, really. Cade Dykes and Sean O'Sullivan have come in as sort of depth signings, which I think are quite good ones. And there were some positive reports about Dykes running at the moment and coming up to full strength and stuff, so that's good. But Leo Thompson is a big one. So the Dogs have been lacking in the middle. They've certainly been lacking front rowers specifically. And their 13s are very much, I guess, utility type of 13s in Kurt Mann and Jamin Salmon, who have been backs most of their lives, that moved into that 13 role as we've sort of evolved as a game in rugby league the last few years. So you don't have those big fellas. And even Max King's not a big fella. But, really, Satili Tupanua, he's been changed into a prop or a middle. And it was really lacking. Leo Thompson comes in, he solves part of that problem. But with your losses, I mean, Drew Hutchison, Reid Marnie, both of those guys played a fair bit of first grade, as did Toby Sexton, but all of them are kind of on their way out a little bit as well. So I don't think that you've really lost a huge amount. Marnie, you'll probably gain giving up 3 penalties a game and about 14 errors. But look, it's interesting though, because you don't really have a 9 either. So
No.
we've got Haywood that we're going to talk about later. So I mean, overall though, pretty settled roster. I don't think you've really lost much, and you've probably gained a bit in the forwards that you really needed in the middle.
Yeah, look, it's. I like the fact that we're not having a year where we're suffering great losses or even gaining too many things. That one area you've already alluded to is our pack. This hasn't just been an issue from last year; it's been an issue for a couple of years now, where we just haven't had a forward that can bend the line, like really bend the line. We've got a couple of guys who are really solid. We've got a couple of guys that are effort guys, which is great, but I think if you look at any of the real powerhouses in the NRL, you've always got someone in their front rows that can really bend the line, right? So that's something that we really have lacking. Now, look, is Leo Thompson the answer to that? I'm not 100% sure, especially for the money that we've invested. I've actually always loved what he did at Newcastle. I just don't know whether or not he's necessarily the be all and end all. But he's definitely a bigger body and a bigger body that we needed. So it'll definitely help that area. I'm just hoping that with, say, that extra big body and with, a preseason now for Galvin, that all of that contributes to an improved, or what was already improved year last year, but, we get further improvement this year from that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I sort of, when I was looking at them, had their range in that 4 to 9 range. I think that they can be top 4. I also could see a world where they are the Dolphins of last year and they play some good football and stuff, but they just fall just outside of it. And a lot of that's going to depend on things like the pack and also particularly the halves and how that works. And there's been, much publicised views about that we won't get into on a SuperCoach podcast too much. But yeah, I've sort of got them in that 4 to 9 range.
Yell at us if we do.
I can't yell at me. He's already blocked me, so he'll never see me again. Blocked me years ago, mate. Years ago. He probably didn't even know who Galvin was by the time he blocked me. But I mean, where have you got them sort of sitting in a range? Like, how do you think they'll do?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've always said that I'm never a fair weather fan, right? Like my team, they've been my team for 25 years now, and I watched every game. I wore their shirts after every loss in those years that we finished in the bottom of the thing. So for me, if we can make the top 8 again, right, I'm going to be happy. Of course, as a supporter, I'd love to be there on the GF day. In my heart, I still think that there's a couple of things in our team that we need to iron out. Like I do still think size is an issue. As much as I enjoy aspects of Tracy's game, I still think we're probably lacking, that fullback reliability, from a defense point of view, from, safety under the ball and all that sort of stuff. I think we've addressed a number of different things, and I'm actually a really big Galvin believer. I actually think Galvin is someone that last year, he was thrown to the walls in a situation that we as a club probably shouldn't have put him in. But I think that he had all the talent growing up, and I think he demonstrated a lot of that with the Tigers. I think it's hard for anyone to expect someone to come into a system and have the success that everyone was demanding of him. I think that having that experience he's had, having an off season, with our team and our systems, I actually think Galvin is on his way to have a cracking year. And I think that, our success for the year will actually be very much on the back of how good he plays. But yeah, like that was a long-winded answer, but I think basically, if we can make top 8 at the end of the year, I'm going to be satisfied.
And I'm with you on Galvin. I actually think a lot's going to rely on Galvin to Canterbury's success, but I think that he'll rise to it. And people forget how young he is. He's still such a young player. He's got so much growth in him, and what he's been able to display at his age already under the pressures and circumstances he's been under is already phenomenal. And I think that's been well underplayed just because of people's, fair, if personal opinions on Galvin and the Tigers and how things ended there and whatever. That stuff sometimes jades people's opinion on actual football talent and ability. And I think that that's probably happened with Galvin. I think that he's an exceptional player. I think he's going to get better as well. So I agree with you there. I think that there's definitely some holes in the Dogs that I'd like to see fixed. And I like what you said about Tracy, because I'm there with him as well. I'm actually against the grain, a little critical of Stephen Crichton as well. And I say that in a way where I still would rate him as one of the top few centres in the game, but a lot of that's based on his defensive ability, which is amazing. But attacking-wise and his ability to lead when you've got the ball, it was just non-existent so many games last year. And you can't have that. Like, we're not... In the modern game, whilst defence is so important, your attack is almost as important as ever in rugby league since 1908. And you can't have centres that are just nothing in attack. And as much as fundamentally he was very good last year and made the right passes, didn't make mistakes and whatever, he scored like 3 tries all season. He didn't necessarily set up a lot, and he didn't go looking for the ball, and he wasn't a worker. And that's something that's, he could improve on, and he could be one of the best at. I'd look at someone like Joey Manu for my Roosters. I think Stephen Crichton could be like Joey Manu in a lot of ways, but he just hasn't been. And reasons for that, I'm not overly critical because, like I said, I still rate him as one of the few centres in the game top. But 46,700 is going to set you back as a centre wing, which a lot of the time is too expensive for people to look at. But he is just such an exceptional SuperCoach beast that you have to consider him. Coming off a career year, so we always knew that Kiraz had this in him, DVG, but 2024 he went to 72 points per game, and a lot of us said he can be better than that even, and he was. He scored 76 points per game. Probably the one knock on him is he only played 17 games, and even some of those games he was hindered. That back injury has not gone away for him, and 3 out of the last 4 years he actually hasn't played a huge amount of games, all in the teens. And we now have some news that he is in the rehab group at the moment. And with a round 2 bye as well, it becomes a little bit risky when you're having a look at, guys that are maybe carrying an injury like him. So I guess that's the negative. But when you look at the positive, there's so many. He's only got 2 scores below 50, below 60 for the whole year. 57 base power is absolutely elite. Led the league in offloads. Offloaded every single game multiple times, and tackle broke every single game except for 1. And, his tries as well, 9 in 17 games, you'd basically expect him to be able to hit that again, if not beat it. So, again, he might have some more in him than that 76 average. He could go to an 80-pluser and be the best centre wing in the game, have a Herbie-like season last year, adding some extra tries, would do that for him. So 150-plus sort of ceiling. He's certainly an elite centre wing. Are you looking at starting with him, considering it, or are you a bit scared about the injury?
Look, I wasn't. I mean, he would have been in my first 4 or 5 picked in the team for all the reasons you've just mentioned. Initially, I know you're blocked, you might not have seen it, but Gus actually said about a month ago that he was having the best preseason he's had in his whole career. So I have no idea what the injury is or when exactly he picked it up, but that was different to what the news was initially coming out, that he actually had the best preseason that he had ever had. So that even solidified it more for me when I was like, okay, if he's having the best preseason, we know everything he does, which a bunch of centers in the game don't do. I believe that Galvin, I've already said, I believe that Galvin will have a better year and rise to the challenge, which I think will lead to having more tries. So for me, it just added all up to do it. I knew that the round 2 bye was there. I wasn't worried about it. I love the fact that the first game is actually in Vegas, because I think the NRL and the referees have subconsciously made those games more free-flowing games. So I actually think they're going to lend themselves to more points. And I like that. I love the fact that was there. I mean, so much so I really, really, truly was pondering starting Galvin with that, and starting with these pieces. I just thought it'd be a cracking start to the year. But look, I think we just have to wait and see if he plays a trial. Like, I think if he plays a trial, and word came out yesterday, I think, that the aim is to play in the second trial. If that happens, I don't think I have any hesitation with starting him. If he doesn't play a trial, that does make me a little bit nervous. So I think my final decision probably hinges on that. But at the moment, he's not moving until we sort of see that news.
I have him there at the moment, and I have the ability to make him Herbie Farnworth instead. And that will be a potential make or break decision for the start of my SuperCoach season. I'm with you. If I see him trial and he's trading in full, I will start him round 1 potentially. If he's not, then I don't have any interest. Even if he's named for round 1, I'm not doing it. He's got the round 2 bye there as well. It's very easy for a team to say, look, we're going to rest him for the first game because it's a very long season. He then gets to play round 3 instead. And, away you go. And the big travel as well can come into it with injuries as well. If you've got an injury that you're carrying and stuff and you've got to travel to Vegas and stuff and have all the jet lag, whatever, it comes into the planning too.
Yeah.
But we forgot to talk about their draw. So we'll finish on Kiraz by saying I think we both agree that he's a fantastic option provided he's healthy, and I think that you can pay for it. If anything, that the injury might keep a few more coaches off him, so he'll be less owned.
Yep.
And for a guy that, I expect him to lead the league in offloads again.
Yeah,
I think he's just going to do it. So great option, definitely one to consider for centre wing. And the draw, though, we forgot to talk about, and we started to now, so we may as well finish off that chat. Dragons, first of all, in Vegas, I quite like that. Like, the Dragons will start better than normal. They might finish a lot worse than this, but round 1 in Vegas, I think they'll be up for it. But like you, I think the games will be entertaining, and I think they could be pretty free-flowing. So I like that matchup. Round 2 bye is not ideal, but I definitely think that you shouldn't leave out guys that you think are going to have a cracker start to the year if they're got a round 2 bye or a round 3 bye. You can have them in there and you can sort of weather that storm for a week as long as you don't have too many. Away at GIO, Canberra, round 3, not great. Newcastle at home, that is great. That's a good matchup for them. So I think out of the first 4 weeks, it's a mixed bag, but 2 out of those 4 I think would pretty much be SuperCoach target games. So that's good. It's just a shame that they've got a bye, and one of them is in Vegas as well. But then they've got Souths in round 5, away, Penrith at home, Para away, Brisbane away. A lot of away games in the first 2 months for the Dogs, including travelling to Vegas. So it's a lot of travel to pack in. A little bit of a concern. And sides like Souths and the Eels, you'd want to play in the first 8 weeks based on last year's form, but it's not last year anymore, is it, TVG? So they're going to be a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, all in all, I was pretty happy. And to be honest, I'm actually really happy as a Bulldogs fan that we've got the round 2 bye after Vegas, because the amount of times that we saw teams the last 2 years, I don't know the stats on if everyone won or lost, but I remember a couple of teams came back from Vegas and it's not like they came back off the plane. They just weren't at their best, particularly in the first half of their game. So I think the fact that the Dogs can take their time, coming back from there, enjoying themselves, all that sort of stuff, I actually think it's a good thing, because they get a fairly lengthy, break into round 3. It's not obvious, it's not ideal from a SuperCoach perspective, but what is ideal from a SuperCoach perspective, we do lose someone in round 2, but the beauty is that means that one of those buys knocks out early. So it means that they don't have a bye later in the year when we're sort of getting to, the business end of things. I hate having players that have those buys that are really, really, really late. It's great that the Dogs get rid of one of their buys early. So that's why I really, again, there's just so many ticks for Kiraz. The only cross is that news that we heard.
I do like the set and forgets for the first bye as well. So round 12, they're going to play the Storm, who should be a bit depleted, and they don't have their first bye until round 15. So that's pretty handy, because someone like Kiraz, you can sit in there and hope he doesn't play Origin, and you've got him every week until the round 15 big bye round, and that's pretty good. And in that period as well, like round 12 is a depleted Storm, round 13 he's got the Tigers, then he's got the Eels, and then he does have that round 15 bye, but then he goes into a home game against Manly and an away game against the Gold Coast. So it's a pretty good middle season run.
Yeah.
And to start with a guy like that and just set and forget him, it can be pretty handy in SuperCoach, because you're going to have so many other fires to put out as well. Preston is another guy like him too, although I think that he will play Origin this year, so that might ruin that first big bye round, him playing it. Preston had a career year, as we all probably expected. 684,600 is going to set you back. But he had over 56 base power. So, again, really good, solid base to work with, ensuring you're not going to get too many low scores. Big thing for him is 11 out of 24 games, he scored a try. So, that was huge. Now, we know he's a bit of an attacking weapon. You do need him to kind of replicate that, though. And I think that he can. I think that he'll probably be around that again. But the big thing with him is that sometimes he scores multiples too. So if you look at his try scoring, in those 11 games where he scored a try or more, he averaged 89 points per game with one or more try. So you look at that and you go, wow, like if I get Preston on the right run, it's going to be golden because he'll score tries. And you could do that. And last year, if you targeted it, he started on fire. He had a 75 average to start the first third of last season. 5 out of 8 of those games he scored a try in. So I guess that's probably, to me, the question that stuck out most. It's not that whether he's an option, because he is. It's whether he's going to be better than the other options based on, do you think that he will start by scoring tries and start well like he did last year? And that was kind of what I was pondering.
Yeah. Look, I think that, again, we go back to our discussions around Galvin, and I think Galvin is going to be the biggest asset for Preston. I don't know how much attention, the listeners were paying towards the end of the season, but in those last 2 to 3 games that Galvin played on that side of the field with Preston, they were elite. He must have put Preston through 4 or 5 gaps in the last 2 games alone. I'm hoping that's the side that they're gonna stick to, because I think that they're going to be a special combination. We know that the Dogs have an excellent attacking weapon in Kikau on the other side, and they leaned on Kikau for so much. But Preston, when he gets his opportunities, he makes them work. Like when he turns half breaks into breaks, with his power at his hips and his waist. I've got every confidence that he can easily score that amount of tries again. You got to remember that last year, as good as the Bulldogs were, that their attack in general was actually still pretty poor. Our success early in the year was all in our defense, right? So the fact that Preston managed to score 11 tries in a team that, our attack just wasn't good. Like our attack was not good last year. If we think that we're going to be better, which I don't think I've got Bulldogs glasses on, I think our attack will be better this year. I'm very confident that he will at least equal that try tally for the year.
Yeah, and if he just gets like 3 extra, you're looking at more like a 76 type of average.
Yeah.
And some people will say, oh, well, it's only 6 points of value. The general rule of thumb is that you want 10 plus points of value. That's when you're trying to make money, though, a lot of the time. If you've got a guy that you're just going to keep and they're an elite keeper, which Preston is at second row forward as a 70 plus type of average, then getting that extra value in a guy that you would buy anyway is immense. So
absolutely,
extra few tries is great for him. And I do think that he's capable of it as well. I guess he did swap sides a couple of times. So that did happen, and what side he plays on, I think, is going to make a difference. He did have a high score of 141, which was the second last game of the year, which was the period that you alluded to, and he scored 3 tries in that outing. So, I mean, that's what we need, obviously. But I can't see Kikau not being on the left when you sort of
Kikau will be on the left. Kikau will definitely on the left. When Kikau's healthy, that's where Kikau's spent his whole career. So, I think, and initially that actually really bugged the crap out of me. That, I was like, well, Kikau, if you're that good, then move to the other side, because I know how good Preston is on the left. But at the same time, I saw glimpses on the right. I mean, Preston has always been good on the right, but I'm talking about, I saw glimpses of that service that he started getting on the right when we made that decision to move over. And I thought, okay, now I can see it. Like now I can see that what they're doing. And that gives them that true dual attacking options on either side.
Yeah, and he's not too expensive. Like it's a decent amount of money to spend. And when you get into the 700s, you sort of just got to pump the brakes a bit and go, whoa. But when you're talking about an elite gun, if you're still in the 600s at 684, it's very palatable. But if you had Preston and Kiraz and you got the round 2 bye, that's when things start to become dicey and when you have to really probably consider it. You mentioned Kikau. We're going to talk about him next. 650,300. The most expensive he's been in years. One of the key stat for him that I really liked, because he did have a really good year for the Bulldogs, but the key thing for me was his base has always been awful, and it's always been an issue that Kikau can pump out so many 30s and even 20s because his base has been bad. Now, in 2024, his raw base was only 31 points per game, which is horrendous for a forward, absolutely horrendous for an 80-minute forward. And this last season, in 2025, he went to 37 points per game. So going up 6 points per game in raw base in a year is a big deal. And it shows that he was getting involved more. And 37 points per game, raw base, DVG, that's not great. But it's a hell of a lot better than the 31. And it means that those games in the 30s became games in the 40s or even 50s. And it was a lot easier to pallet. He was very good, but I'm going to say like I've been on kick out so many times in the past each year around the bye period and stuff, and he always burnt me. Last year was one year that I didn't really get on, and I should have, because in the middle of the season, like from round 10, he went 99, 70, 45, 78, 109, 66, 69, and then the bye rounds finished. And it was the best big bye round coverage he's ever done in his career. And it was the one year out of the last 4 that I didn't actually get him for the bye round coverage. So he did really well, but again, the same kick-out stuff is there. And 67 points per game is the best he's ever done. The years before, he went 53, 46, 65, 59. I actually think that he's going to drop a few points in value myself. So I don't want to say he's not an option. He is. And like last year in that Origin period, he could prove me wrong. But I will not be going that way. And I think that there's better options if you're going to spend like a peak price kick-out. I think you could go elsewhere.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be starting the year with him. I think he's definitely a candidate for dropping. You already alluded to what I was going to discuss, that I think he is a potential mid-year pickup, and I'm pretty confident that we'd be able to get him for anywhere between 50 to 100,000 cheaper for that period. But I just think that with that sort of those base numbers pretty low, it makes it hard to start off him and pay that sort of money for him.
Yeah, I think the year before, I reckon I got him sub 400 the year before in 2024. It was crazy how cheap he was because of the runs of, like, he would have had like 330 games in a row, basically, and that's sort of him, particularly with that round 2 bye and everything else. I'm a stay away, but there will be some fans of going him because he is on that left-hand side. Crichton, spoke about him a bit before, more in real life, 600,000 on the nose he's going to cost. And he is always one of those Kieran Foran type characters where I think whether you go, like, you could go back 15 years in SuperCoach and there would have been new people to SuperCoach that are big rugby league fans or casual SuperCoaches that would put Kieran Foran in their team and then get really disappointed when he put out a 35 average in 80 minutes for the first 6 weeks. But he looked really good on the field and did a lot for Manly. That is very much, to me, what Crichton is. Crichton is very rarely an option that I like. But last year, something did change. He did score a lot better, and that came because he was goal kicking. Now, I don't actually know for sure who's going to goal kick. I think that it will probably be Crichton at the moment, but if he loses it, then he loses a lot of points. His 61 average last year was way better than his 53 in 2024. The 2 years before that was 64 and 60, but that was at Penrith scoring a lot more points. Basically, his good season and his improvement from 2024 came from getting the goal kicking tee. That's where it came from. He only scored 3 tries though. So the other argument is, surely you can't score anywhere near 3 tries again, because he was double-digit try scoring every year of his career until last season. So even if he had the second worst try scoring of his career this year, he could go from like 3 to 8 tries very easily. And those 5 tries, like, you're talking about 135 extra points across the season. So all of a sudden, again, you're looking at an extra 6 points a game. And there's an argument that, well, he's actually a 67 average there, and that's really good. So, I mean, I can see both ways on Crichton. 600K isn't too much, but if I'm getting like 2024 type of Crichton with the 2025 try scoring, meaning he doesn't goal kick, then it can be a disaster as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I think for those of us who are starting with Kiraz, I think it's really, really hard to have Crichton as well because of the round 2 bye. I don't think you can have both. I think then you'll just have, like, if you're spending 1.3 or 4 million on 2 players that are going to miss, in the same position, that just makes it very hard. I'm very, very keen to see what happens with the kicking tee. If we sit there and happy to watch round 1 in Vegas and see who kicks, and then we're happy to come back and see who kicks in round 3. If he's got a kicking tee, and again, we've said it a few times, we think the Dogs' attack would improve this year. I think he actually is a very good target, because I think tries, with an improved, attacking structure, tries should come. So if you have more tries and he's retaining a goal kicking, I think it's perfect. But I just think that it's a little bit hard, a little bit of an awkward price point with the round 2 bye to start with him right now.
Yeah, he should be better in SuperCoach than what he is. It's just he had he couldn't even get to 40 base power when
Yeah.
when you're looking at his stats. It's just 26 raw base is just not enough for his talent, for his athleticism, for what he can do, and for the captain of that footy team. He should be looking at even 10 points better than that.
Yeah.
Just on raw base, let alone the tackle breaks and offloads that will come with that extra work. And then you got the try scoring too. Like, I like you, Stephen. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. Not angry. I'm just disappointed. Let's move on to the next one. And this one is going to be a bit of he's under the gun category. And you know what? He's scraped in by a nose of a roundup. Max King, 583,500. And look, there's a lot of people that'll say he's a plotter and he's terrible and stuff and whatever. Look, there's one key thing that I think people forget about last year. I'm not saying that he's a massive option in SuperCoach at all, but he started last year really well. And the first third of the year, I thought he was really good for the Dogs, and that translated to SuperCoach, and he got picked for Origin. And then there was a story that was sort of kind of half buried that didn't really come out that well in the media, that he had to move house because he actually got quite sick and he couldn't shake it. And it was because there was where he was living, and there was a weird medical condition that was developing and stuff. And he openly said in that interview that, you know, he's been really sick and it's been really tough to get through the season. And that was at about the halfway point. So when you have a look at his splits, like the first round 1 to 9, he averaged 62 points a game, started quite well. Round 10 to 18, he was 72 points a game. And then round 19 to 27 to finish off the year, which we'll call the mould rounds, he was 52 points per game. So I'm going to hazard a guess that he's cleaned up the mould now. And if he is the other, you know, his first 2/3 of the season, Max King, then his 60 average, you know, he could get that to a 65. And he showed that because that's what he averaged until like round 19-ish. So all of a sudden you go, well, that's pretty decent gun for front row forward. And he's sub 600. And he's also someone too where I think that you'll remember as a big Bulldogs fan, DVG, he came onto the scene and was a really good offloader, and then it just stopped. And you go look at him and go, wow, he's got 52 base and he's got 56 base power almost. Like, he's doing nothing in his power stats.
Yeah.
If he could get back to that and also did what he did last year and play a few more minutes, because it was the least minutes he's played since 2022, and I'm going to gauge that's because of his health.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that he's a buy, but he makes a case that maybe we underrate him a little bit as what he could potentially do in SuperCoach.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've always rated him. I've owned him in SuperCoach, I think, both last couple of years. He, you know, last year was a very weird year. It's like they took away his license for doing stuff, which, you know, that could have been for a number of reasons, like, you know, our attacking structures were a bit interesting. Who knows whether or not that returns. Look, I find it hard to make the justification to have him in there when you have so many other good front row options this year in SuperCoach. Look, I know Payne Haas is $300,000 more, but we sort of, that's one spot that I think most people go, you know what? Haas is probably going to take up one spot. And then all of a sudden you've got so many other talented front rowers who had such a good year last year, whether you talk about your Terrell May, your Uticamano, you know, had a great finish to the year.
Colin Matangi's only about 75k more as well.
Yeah, like it's just, I look at all those, and then you've got, you know, other people, you know, in those things, like who might be coming back, like a Flegler and stuff like that. It makes, I think, it hard to justify Max's price, the round 2 buy, all that sort of things into consideration. Yeah, no, look, I've loved being an owner of him the past couple of years. I really hope that I find myself having to get him, you know, a few rounds into the year, because it obviously, if he's sort of going well, it means the Bulldogs will be going well. So,
no, I totally agree. I can't consider him for round 1 at all in Classic, but I do think that he's a good consideration late in your drafts.
Absolutely.
Drafts, I think he will be a really solid guy in your front row forward. And he had a career high 112 points per game, points in a game last year. Mm-hmm. And that was no coincidence. That happened in that first third of the season where he started really well. So, I think in draft he's a great one. Certainly, like you said, Classic, too many options and he's too expensive for that. And he is pretty one-dimensional still. Would like to see him change his game a little bit. But I do think that Leo Thompson might help do that, because Leo Thompson is that type of forward that is very meat and potatoes and is the same. And I kind of got the feeling that the Bulldogs might have said to Max, hey, you're not just our alpha prop, you're our only prop. We don't have anyone else. So, be a big fella, roll your sleeves up and just get the meters and just do the runs and do the tackles like a big fella. And that could change a little bit. So we'll wait and see on that. Let's look at our fallen gun, and that is an old SuperCoach favourite of mine, Matt Burton, 557,400. How things change. He was not a good option last year, and he's shaping as an even worse option this year. He lost the goal kicking to Stephen Crichton during the year, and that really hurt him. And his playmaking was also slightly down on his SuperCoach stats as well. So when you've got a base power that's going to get you in the mid-30s and you rely on that goal kicking and your playmaking and your goal kicking goes and the playmaking goes down and the goal kicking goes down, then all of a sudden you're in big trouble as a SuperCoach option. And that was Matt Burton last year, and it's going to be Matt Burton this year as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it is. It's look, I mean, the goal kicking will, if we know he's goal kicking, that obviously helps build a case. But I just, I don't like. I get the sense that Crichton will kick, and I also get the sense that from a playmaking point of view, Galvin will be the person that leads the team around the park. So I think that his playmaking stuff is probably not going to be as prevalent.
Yeah, I'm even pretty gun-shy on him in draft, to be honest. He did 57 points per game last year, but when you have a look at the splits on when Galvin came in, he finished on 55 points per game. And without the goal kicking and Galvin taking more of the reins, he could easily be a 52-point game type of player, Burton.
Yeah.
So I think that people will even overpay for him in draft potentially, which is a shame. But, 26 raw base and not much in the power stats and no goal kicking. It's just a bad story for him all over. The only thing that I could say that would be a positive and maybe a saving grace for him, DBG, is if the Bulldogs attack does go up, he organically will have to get more playmaking. And if that happens and he had goal kicking, then he could get back into the 60s potentially.
Yeah, but I just think it's a wait and see on that. Like, it's not something that I can sort of find myself starting with him. I'd want to be able to wait and see it to see how it all pans out in those first few weeks.
Dead keen, but I thought that he was going to be dual and I could put him at 6. If he was at 6, it's a 50-50 that I would have him round 1 to start in my team. I really quite like him this year. The problem is that as a halfback, he's obviously behind half a dozen other really good options, including cheaper ones like a Mitchell Moses and stuff. So it's very hard to justify going Galvin. But one thing to consider is the splits and how it sort of worked out in his scoring. 60 was actually his true average for the year because he had 2 low-minute games off the bench for the Dogs, and it's around a 61 average if you look at him as just a dog starting half because obviously he came sort of mid-season. So he was actually pretty close to what he was doing at the Tigers, but then you have a look at it and go, well, what was he doing that final third of the season when he was a starting half? 60% of his games were 40+. That's not great, but it's kind of important because he is a guy that projects to have a really good scoring floor, so he doesn't kill you with 20s or 30s, which Mitchell Moses can do even with goal kicking. And 40% of his games were 70+, and that is good because 70+ is elite scoring, what you want. And if you can move that up to 50% of the time, that's all of a sudden a really interesting half to consider. I can't do it from round 1. Like I said, I wanted him at 6, and there's too many options at 7. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a really good pod, particularly in the early rounds, if not at some point during the year, outplaying some of the more fancied options.
Yeah. Look, the day that SuperCoach opened, I had him there. I had him there, and I sort of had him for a couple of days. But because I'm a person that will be actually starting, well, barring injury news, I will be starting with Kiraz and Preston. I just literally can't have 3 of my main things losing from the round 2 bye, because then I'd be relying on my bench half back piece to be covering that week, which I just wasn't comfortable with. Look, I saw enough good signs that I think that with the off season in the structure that I think he will definitely outscore what he did last year's average. I'm actually huge on him in drafts. Like, I've already done 2 drafts and I've already got him in both those drafts. I'm huge on him from that perspective. And look, I honestly see myself probably looking at picking him up later in the year. Like, I think that that's where he's going to get to. Like, I've got every confidence he's going to be a really, really nice piece SuperCoach-wise. But yeah, just to start the year, it's just too hard.
Yeah, I love it in draft because there's 6 or 7 halfbacks that'll go ahead of him, and then everyone will target the fullbacks as well. So you can get him getting pretty reasonable price point. I reckon he's going 65+ this year. I think it's a career year for him. And I'm looking forward to it. He's also shown he's already got a slightly better base power than what Matt Burton does when you look at the starting stats for him as a Bulldog. But he showed at the Tigers that when he's got a lot of a running game in him, and he gets the offloads and the tackle breaks, which are really important for SuperCoach as well. Let's talk about, I'm just going to breeze over and say I had Leo Thompson on the list just to say, look, don't do it as a Big Balls pod, because I saw a couple of people actually like have him in there. And it's like, I understand you're a Bulldogs fan and he's going to be solid. He could add an extra few points to his average, but don't do it. In the interest of time, we'll leave it at that and go for the mistake or controversial take. And that is Tracy, who was actually a gun last year. So it is a bit controversial. 611,000 fullback only is a killer for him. But there was a lot of people really big on him last year at points of the season, and that was because you could throw him in at centre wing. But he really didn't reward the time that people jumped on him. I know that SuperCoach Playbook was huge on it, and they're right way more than I am, and are great. So shout out to SuperCoach Playbook, but they were livid at how badly he went. Because I think he had like 3 games in a row in the 30s, and unfortunately, that is Tracy. He doesn't really get enough big scores, and he has too many low ones. And as fullback only, obviously DVG at 611,000, it's too valuable. You've got to have guys in fullback that are going to gun it and they're going to score well, including in your flex spot. And there's just too many other options. So, I mean, I probably just smashed Tracy a bit too much than is fair, but as a SuperCoach option, he probably deserves it.
You can't start him. In and around that same price point, you've got your Pongers, your Tom Trebojeviches, you've got Counter Kinney, who's cheaper. Like, that's just 3 straight off the bat without even far longer. I just think that straight away you've got options there which are going to be better value. Won't have a round 2 bye, all that sort of stuff. So I'm fairly confident that he's not one that anyone should be starting with.
Look, we are going to have a big talk about mids and cheapies here. But before we do, I just have to take a quick break just to mention to everyone, now that everyone's all engaged and everything, the great partner and sponsor of the NRL Allstars podcast 3 years in a row, and that is oneworldcourier.com.au. If you go to One World Courier online, if you've got any shipping or freight needs at all for your business or a business that you work for, or even a friend's business, happy for you to refer on and get them to go and try them out. You can go online and sign up for a free account, and it'll say, where did you hear about us? And you put NRL All-Stars podcast, and they'll go, right, we're going to give you a great rate card to start off with and to try One World Courier. And when you try them, you can basically put in what you want to send, where you want to send it to, and all the specs, and they'll give you all different providers that you can choose from, whether it's TNT, Ozpost, or whoever. And you just choose whoever you want to go with and get invoiced, and then they'll take care of it all for you. You don't have to deal with the provider at all. So they're a great service and also a great supporter of the podcast. So please, if you have the need, or anyone that you know has the need, please jump on and check out oneworldcourier.com.au today. Now, mids and cheapies, pretty big one here to talk about. And I'm going to say there's only one on the Bulldogs list, but it is put me in a bit of a pickle, I have to say. So young Haywood has now inherited Reid Marnie's jersey. There is no hooker that is going to be on the bench, it seems, because you don't really have one, and you're going to make him into a number 9. I was all for it at 343,900. He was one of the first players I picked and plugged in as a value guy, just to have that second hooker. And I did believe in him a lot more than a Brandon Smith that's burnt me in the past and stuff. But when I looked at the numbers, mate, I need you to help me out here, because 7 of 24 games were 7 of 24 games were 40 minutes or under last year, giving him a heap of value. But you look at the last 4 games where he's starting a hooker, 68 minutes a game, and he scored 36 points per game.
It does. It makes it hard. There's a lot of. I'm going to start by saying I'm actually one of Haywood's biggest fans. For those of you who don't know much about him, you should Google some of his performances in the lower grades. He's a special kid. He's a really, really special kid. Just honestly, he's just totally out of the box. Incredible that in those lower grades, the positions he played, and then he's had to transition from being that halfback in the lower grades and being not just a halfback, but I'm talking like player of the comps in those things, and then has all of a sudden become a utility forward for the Bulldogs for last year, and then a hooker. Things he just did not do in his career at all. He did not do it. So I think that actually shows how talented of a player he is, that he's been able to transition from something he never did growing up to the things he does now. Well, from a Supercoach perspective, I think his price point is okay. Just think we need to, you alluded to those figures, I think we need to be seeing more to be confident that you're going to be able to start with him and make enough money out of him that you're going to be able to turn him into someone that you're going to be able to keep at hooker. That's my only concern. If we start with him at that price point, how much money are we going to make with him? Are we going to be in a position where we're going to get stuck with him, having only made 50 grand, by midway through the season? I'm not sure. Maybe, with a preseason under his belt at hooker and playing an 80-minute role, maybe he does make the money that we all need to. I've definitely softened how much I was going to have him in there because of that. I just worry that there's not going to be a lot there, and I have a gut feeling that as part of their structures, the Bulldogs are probably just going to get him to do a lot of passing from hooker rather than running. Like I think that he's going to be doing a hell of a lot of passing to your Burtons and your Galvins to do the playmaking. I just don't know how much is going to happen from where he's getting the ball at.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that he could potentially make 50 plus tackles a game though, and that's going to be helpful for his value. If his work rate and stuff wasn't great last year, 0.64 ppm, but if he did that in 80 minutes in the middle at 0.64, it is very low. You'd expect it to go up first of all, but say it's 0.64, that's still 51 points per game, and at his price point, he's still going to make quite good cash out of that. So it doesn't look great on paper, but the few things that are keeping him in my side, it still looks like you're going to get 100 to 150k out of it. So there's that. Small sample size last year where he actually played 9. A lot of the time it was in the middle of it, even more so the first third of the season. I think he was starting at 6 for a lot of it. So there was that as well when you're looking at it. And probably the biggest thing for me, though, is he's now got, and you sort of alluded to it when you mentioned, the positions that he played as junior and stuff. He's now got a preseason where he's like, I know my position. I'm a hooker, and I get to train as a hooker, build my body as a hooker, and get reps as a hooker before the season even starts. And he's a young guy, and he's a goer, and I like his attitude. And I've actually, and I'll also say too, like I've seen him speak a couple of interviews and stuff here and there last year, where I went, he's great. I really like him. He's really intelligent. I like how he speaks. I like how he handles himself. Really big respect for him as a young player. So those type of guys, you can't dismiss attitude and stuff, because if you've got that and you'll put in the work then, and that translates all the time. And I look at it and go, he could be twice as good this year. And that's sort of given me a little bit pause to getting rid of him, because he's sort of the anti Brandon Smith option, right? Brandon Smith is cheaper, but Brandon Smith doesn't have the attitude, doesn't have the runs on the board, never instills confidence when I hear him open his mouth. And then there's everything else he does too. It's just completely opposite. So I'm finding myself keeping him in there, but the price point and what happened last year is in the back of my head. So it's not like it's a home run.
Yeah. Look, I've actually, a lot of the times when I was building my structure, I actually, had both those boys in my team as a structure. And I guess
I've
that
done
was
those
where,
ones before.
Yeah. And that's where I get scared, because I think the more I've thought about it, you can only have one of them, because if they both were to go to shit, like for some reason, let's say Hayward only ends up playing 60 minutes at hooker, I think we would then have 2 problems on our hands, and it would make it very hard to navigate. So that's where it becomes a little bit hard. Again, maybe the trials tell us a bit more about what I know. Let's say he only plays 40 minutes in a thing, but you'll actually get an eye test of what he's doing out of hooker, how he's facilitating the ball, is he running the ball, how many tackles are he doing, all that sort of stuff. Maybe that paints a picture for us to, well, particularly for me, to get a bit more confidence that at what that price point is and what he'll do.
Well, the thing I'm interested in trials, because you never know minutes, right? And that's the thing, like it's hard with forwards because people will be like, oh, Colin Matangi only played 45 minutes. It's like, it's a trial. It doesn't really matter. You don't know anything. But if somebody else goes into that hooker spot, like if you get Kurt Mann go into hooker during a trial to sub him off, you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Because Kurt Mann is in that team. He is on the bench, and he doesn't ever play hooker. So if you're going to put him in at hooker, then that's a big deal. Whereas if I see like a young kid that no one's ever heard of that's 18, 17, goes in and plays hooker off a 30-man extended bench, you go, it's just giving him reps, and you don't see him named in the round 1 side, and you go, feel pretty good about Hayward. So
Yep.
that's probably what we'll be able to see. And to be honest, that's probably what will gauge whether he's a buy or not for me for round 1.
Yep.
All right. Well, that is everybody to talk about for all the Bulldogs for the team preview. It was a great episode, thanks largely to multi-sport SuperCoach champion, elite player, DVG. I've talked him up massively, but he has won NRL SuperCoach 4 and I've won no sports. So there is that. Mate, thanks for jumping on. It was great to talk your Bulldogs today.
Yeah, mate, I really appreciate the invite. I think I've jumped on the show a couple of times every year now for the last couple of years since we first met on our NBL journey. And, mate, I really appreciate all the content that you put out for us in the community, mate, and looking forward to hopefully jumping on later in the year.
Thanks, mate. We will definitely get you on during the year, 100%. For everybody that's listening or watching, make sure that you do subscribe. You can subscribe and follow us on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. And you can also jump on all the social media. We're on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Got to update all of them a little bit more. Most of my updates are on X, so definitely jump on there. But hopefully you're enjoying the team previews. We'll have another 2 to come out this week. So keep on subscribing, keep on enjoying, tinkering with your team. Can't wait to talk more footy again with everyone real soon.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid.